You're listening to Breaking Biz Dev with John Tyerman and Mark Wainwright. Conversations that break down, beat up, and redefine business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. And now for your hosts, John and Mark.
Referrals. That's what we're talking about today. It's the lifeblood of professional services firms, especially firms that are just starting out and are starting to grow. Mark, you've got a referral process that I'm really excited to dig into. What's your big high level setting the stage for a referral process?
Referrals are a powerful tool that professional services firms, experts can use to, generate new business, right? And I would say that they are overused in some cases and underused in other cases. It's an interesting thing that kind of goes through one's head when we're talking about referrals, because referrals are inevitably someone that you know and trust introducing you to someone else, right? Mm-hmm. So some firms, some organizations, or even individuals who are in professional services firms may embrace that. They may be like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. I'm getting these new business opportunities coming in from all these great people that I've worked with, people that I know, people that trust me, et cetera. Others are like, no. Our way of developing new businesses needs to be different from that. We need to go find them. We need to compete for new business in, writing a proposal and submitting it to some agency or municipality or whoever else, or some client who's going to make a decision. We need this. We need the interview process. We need all that other stuff, and we're not going to spend any time on referrals. So I would say that it is used unevenly across a bunch of different types of professional services firms, but I think it's a powerful tool to have in the kind of new business lead generation toolshed. What we want to talk about today is an intentional process to go and get referrals that is driven by individual doer sellers and firms. John, I'm certain that you've got some kind of thoughts. You have a process around this as well. I've got some thoughts around this as well. I have a process that I recommend my clients use. So let's dig into both of those.
Yeah, let's dig into both of those. Before we do, though, Mark, I was going to ask you where you think referrals land on the sales and marketing continuum.
Oh, yeah. The sales and marketing continuum. If you've listened to us in the past, hopefully you have. We've got this sort of linear scale. Just picture maybe dots on a line from 1 to 5, and the ones are what John and I call marketing activities, marketing stuff. And 5 is sales stuff, right? And I know most of you are thinking, isn't that all just business development? No, that's why we're here. Yep. We are here to figure out, to pull apart this crazy big bucket called business development into these really important functions, these important activities, marketing and sales, and to figure out how they all kind of weave together. But yes, they fall along that continuum. And I think they're all over the place. Yep. They probably land, they're more on the, I'm going to say, all right, one's our marketing stuff, right? Mm-hmm. They're close to that. Maybe I'm going to say we're in the 2 to 4 range. I'm going to say we're there. Which means to me is like, we're in the middle.
My reaction was going to be 4. That's where I would place these referrals.
All right. So, I was really broad on that one. I was hedging my bets. If these tools are used correctly, I think they are being used by those people that we call doer sellers. They are I even go as far as to call those doer sellers members of I'm using my air quotes here, John, the sales team, which, makes most people kind of bristle, because, any respectable professional services firm would never have something called a sales team, but they do. They have a bunch of people in the organization who are, at some point in their day, week, month, spend a little bit of time selling their services. So they're part of the sales team. So yes, I believe that referrals should be part of that group's responsibility. And that's how they go and create new opportunities.
So let's dig in then.
Yeah.
Why should professional services firms ask for referrals? Why not just wait and just do good work and the referrals will come?
Yeah, well, there's a number of great reasons. First of which, and I think this one might not be top of mind for everyone, your clients, your previous clients, your professional connections, people who would be a great source of a referral actually want to help. They want to help. They want to see you be successful. They want other people, maybe that they know, to experience the same types of things that they experienced while working with you, right? They want their connections, their professional friends, whoever they are, to experience the same kind of success that you did. So they want to help. They want to see others. They want you to be successful. They want others to be successful. So I think that's one that isn't necessarily top of mind.
That's an interesting
but I think
one
it's super important
because it's kind of like this phenomenon where you want to validate your own decisions, right?
Yeah.
I worked
sure.
I worked with this firm, and I think you should too, because if you do, it'll help me feel better about my choice.
Yeah. There's that. Yeah, I think those are similar. I totally do. I think they are definitely similar. Okay, another one. Why? And this is more on sort of the sales end of stuff, right? So
Sure.
it's referrals are, generally speaking, they're great leads, right? And they've gone through some kind of a pre-qualification thing where someone's actually, maybe your longtime client who's going to give you a referral, vets that whole thing a little bit, right? They've assessed some level of fit already. And that's what qualification is, right? We're trying to figure out if this is a really good fit. So they've already done a little bit of that qualification. So I'm not going to call them totally pre-qualified, but someone says, yeah, I think you guys would be a good fit together. And they obviously know how you work because they've worked with you, or they know you well, they know your services. So there's a little bit of pre-qualification. Awesome, right? So they're a little bit further along that whole selling process, right? When you really get into the meat of it, another great thing about referrals, is they tend to move faster.
Yes.
People are engaged, right? They move a little faster, so there's a lower cost of sale. That is good. I know cost of sale is kind of a term, but it's a thing, right? We want to reduce the amount of time and energy and resources that we spend on moving something from a maybe to a contract, and they tend to do that, right? They tend to do that more reliably, meaning that the sort of the hit rate, close rate, whatever you want to call it, is higher with referrals.
Yes.
Right. That just happens. And ultimately they end up becoming fantastic clients, right? Because they've been engaged in the process. They're kind of pre-qualified. They're bought into the whole thing. They're being good and communicative and all that other stuff. And they're being communicative and really responsive and engaged because they understand that the person that referred you to them or them to you, there's a little bit of a trust triangle thing that's kind of happening right there.
Yeah.
So, hey, Bob referred me to you, the architect. I don't want to let Bob down, right? I want to show Bob that I really regard his referral highly, that I really respect his opinion and his, because anytime Bob is going to refer you to his architect, Bob's like, I'm sticking my neck out a little bit here.
That's right. Yep.
Right. So there's a little transfer, I call it a transfer of trust that happens. So that little transfer of trust that happens in that referral process tends to move things along nicely. They're more successful, lower cost of sale. They're good, right? They're good for business.
I did an analysis for a professional services firm 2 or 3 years ago where we wanted to understand why we win, right?
Yeah.
And so I did some digging into Salesforce CRM, and what I found was that leads that came from inbound SEO closed at a 25% clip.
Okay.
Leads that came in via referral closed at a 66% clip. So there's some empirical data to support exactly what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah, it's powerful. And some firms use the heck out of them. Others don't. But we've got some ideas on a process, a framework that firms can use to kind of really make the most of them.
Yeah, so let's dive into that process. So you've developed a process for generating more referrals. What I'd love to do, Mark, is can you list off each step of your process, and then we can unpack each one step by step.
All right. I'll list them quickly, and then we can run through the details. We want to create a list of potential referrers. We want to spend some time writing down, thinking about who our ideal clients are and being able to describe them. We want to develop a story about the results that those clients achieved when they work with us. That's a client success story. We've talked about this in the past because we're going to use that story in this referral process. We want to get ourselves organized. We want to set some goals for ourselves in this whole referral process. We want to measure our progress, obviously. Now, that's all the stuff you do internally to get yourself ready to go for it. You've got all these, you got the story, you got a list, you've got all those that you got to go, you've created a spreadsheet of the 10 people you're going to ask for a referral. Great. Got yourself organized. Now, first step is you start asking permission to the people on that list. Permission's super important. Next is if they say yes, right, you're going to schedule an appointment or a meeting or a conversation with them to ask them about the referrals, right? And then in that conversation, you're going to describe your ideal client. You're going to hopefully walk through that story. Ideally, if everything goes well, you're going to get some sort of an introduction. And then you want to make sure that you follow up with that person who gave you the referral. Hey, thanks. I connected with, Joan. She was fantastic. I'm looking forward to talking to her again. Thanks. Right. There you go. So I think it was like 9 steps there. That was a lot. It was a lot of steps. But yeah, happy to unpack.
Cool. So let's start with number 1. Let's start with creating a list of potential referrers. And so these are maybe their current or past clients that you've worked with. Could there be other players that could make referrals?
Absolutely. I've gotten really good referrals from people who just know me professionally and know I have some level of expertise, right? So sure, they're on there. They could be longtime collaborators. Mm-hmm. A lot of the organizations I work with have to do their work in tight collaboration with other firms, other professionals. So could be them. And even if you're sort of brainstorming and you're trying to think of, gosh, who could be on that list? You could kind of go for a while, mm-hmm. right? Like, who are all my business connections? Who knows me just sort of, who might know some potential prospective clients of mine? Heck, you can even go outside all of your business connections and you can start wandering into personal connections and family and things like that. Now, some people think that starts to get a little odd, but I think it's totally legitimate. And I believe that those people, maybe even more so than others, really want to help. So it's a great way to start building your list. And so I think we've kind of built out a pretty long list. You need to prioritize that list.
That's right.
And I would probably prioritize those lists with the people who know you and are more familiar with your expertise, et cetera. And then as you kind of work your way down, you're kind of headed into that, Aunt Mabel sort of stuff that can refer you. So
good old Aunt Mabel.
Yeah. I don't want to discount any individual that you would have on your list because you never know, right? It's one of those things where you never know.
That's right. Okay. So you've got your list of referrers. Okay. Yes. So step number 2 is to define your ideal client and be prepared to articulate them. Let's unpack that one a little bit.
Sure. This whole proactive process is to really find fantastic clients, right? So you have to have a very clear understanding of who those ideal clients are, and it can be any criteria. It can be geographic location. It can be the size of the firm. It can be what they do. It can be, how they're put together, right? Meaning, who are the individuals who are at that organization, et cetera. It can be any number of criteria, but you need to have a really clear idea of who they are. And typically that comes from some reflection. Mm-hmm. Wow, what types of organizations have I been most successful with in the past, right? What size were they? Where were they? What did we do together? What types of goals did they have that I was able to help them achieve, right? That sort of stuff. So that hopefully starts to paint a really clear picture of your ideal client. And the reason that you want to have that prepared is you want to be able to relay this on to your potential referrers. Right? You need to describe to them in detail the types of organizations with whom you can be really mutually successful. So then, instead of either your potential referrer is thinking, oh, I'm either going to come up with 1,000 different people I can refer them to, or gosh, I can't think of anyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you give them the sufficient information that they need, and you really describe who this ideal client might be, then they're like, oh, I can think of two. I can think of two good ones. Yep, they seem to fit that. They seem to fit that description, and that's what you want.
I've put together a few different referral processes and programs before. This is an area where I found a little bit of success in is taking it one step further. And LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. I've gone on to LinkedIn, and if you create that list of potential referrers, if you're connected with those clients, you probably are. If you've done business with them, you're connected with them on LinkedIn. You can actually go in and see who their first degree connections are.
Right.
And then you could create a list of saying, hey, here's our ideal client profile. And oh, by the way, you're connected with John Smith and Jane Doe, and they would be perfect fits. And you're doing the work for them. They don't even need to think of who to refer you to. You've already done that work.
It's true. I'll tell you, that is such a tricky one. And here's why I say that, right? It's tricky because different individuals deal with LinkedIn differently. There's kind of two buckets. There's sort of people who are open networkers and people who are not, right? So people who are open networkers, generally they accept all of their incoming, connection requests, and they're the people that have a whole bunch of connections. Now, the challenge with what you just said there, I mean, it's totally legit, and it is absolutely worth a shot. Sometimes you will stumble across, maybe there's 4 different people that you have seen are, first degree connections with some individual, and you say, hey, Sue, I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I came across these 4 people. They look fantastic. Do you think they'd be really good, referral resources? And she says, yeah, I don't even know 3 of them. And one of them is a complete knucklehead. Right. So you're like, dead end. So that's the only caveat. I'm just going to give you a little asterisk on the end of that, which I think is good. I think both are legitimate. So there you go. There's my little riff on that one.
All right, let's talk about number 3. Develop a story about the results to be used during the meeting.
So again, this is that client success story where you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're talking all about yourself. Right? You want to relay that client success story to them. You want to be able to give them you want them to be able to relate to a previous client that you tell them through this story. You want to be able to really clearly spell out the results that client achieved. You want to do this in a story so it's memorable. Remember, those stories plant themselves in our brains, and you want to make sure that is there. You don't want to default to listing your 10 bullet points of services and all that stuff. You want to be able to tell it in a story. So that's there. Your story is right there. And that story is another filter that your potential referrer can use to think, okay, Sue would be a fantastic person. I was thinking that Bob would be a really good. No, he's not. That story was, that was clear to me that that's not something Bob's going to want. Fantastic. Great.
So you've developed a list of potential referrers. You've defined your ideal client profile. You've created a story that you're going to come to that meeting with the potential referrer armed with that story. So step number 4 is to set goals, get organized, and measure progress and results. Let's unpack that one.
Yeah, I think that can happen early on in this process. It can happen right now, but inevitably, part of the internal preparation that's required is just getting yourself organized. Getting your ducks in a row. Like, you got your list, you got your goals. What do you want to achieve with this whole thing? In order to really understand if you're making progress throughout this whole process, you need to set some goals for yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? Simple goals like, I'm going to ask 3 people per month for referrals, and out of that, I want to get 1 potential client per month, or per quarter, whatever whatever those goals are, kind of that sort of stuff, where you actually start bringing some numbers to it, and numbers really help you motivate, right? Plus, you want to be organized. You just don't want to do this sort of ragtag. You don't want to be making a bunch of phone calls or sending a bunch of emails out, and not be tracking your progress through this. Just like anything, you can get lost in it, because suddenly you're going to find that you've got 3 emails and 4 phone calls out there to 7 different people, and they're all either getting back to you or not getting back to you, or at their different points, or they've gotten back and they've referred you to somebody already. And, so it can get super, super confusing. If you're just doing one, it's not going to get confusing, but you're not. You're going to do a handful at a time. So you need to be organized, because in any second you can be completely overwhelmed and completely lose track of where you are. Easy.
Yeah, and that can be done in a fancy CRM tool, or that could be just as simple as a spreadsheet with a few different cells, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely worth keeping organized.
Yeah.
Cool. So step number 5 is to ask permission to have the referral conversation. I like that you say ask permission to have the referral conversation. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, that's an important step that I think we skip over, right? When I talk to people about referrals, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to make the list. I'm going to have a list of 6 different people, and I'm going to call the first person on that list. And the first words out of my mouth are going to be, hey, do you know anybody? Right? That's not what we want. What we want is, we want to say, would you feel comfortable having a conversation with me about people who we might be able to help, right? And you can use those exact words, right? But something like that, where you're gauging their comfort and their interest in having this conversation with you. You're not just coming out and saying, hey, who do you know? You are saying, hey, would you be okay? Would you be comfortable with having this conversation? And some people are going to opt out immediately. They're going to be like, nah, I'm not really, that's not what I do. Or some people are going to say, sure, I'd love to help. And you say, great, let's get something on the calendar. We're not going to have this conversation in the next, 20 minutes. Let's get something on the calendar so both of us can kind of get prepared. I'll send you a little prompt ahead of time to kind of have you noodling a little bit, doing a little bit of brainstorm maybe. And what I have found is that if you take that added step, asking permission, getting that referral conversation scheduled, that they're doing some thinking already. Like the second you ask them if it's okay to have the conversation, they're starting to think of people, right? Mm-hmm. So they're likely going to come into that very first conversation with a handful of maybes. And you're going to tell them, you're going to describe your ideal clients, you're going to tell them the story, they're going to be editing and filtering, so that first conversation, that referral conversation, is super productive, right? So the first step, I call it sort of like the first half step, is just asking permission. It's like, is this cool if we do this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people need to understand why you're asking too. So I found some success in teeing up those conversations is like, referrals are a big way that we grow our business, and we take referrals seriously. And just even that one line by itself just kind of like addresses like, okay, why are you asking me for referrals? And then that helps who you're talking to get in the frame of mind where they're more open and receptive to giving you those referrals.
I love it. You nailed that. I totally agree.
Cool. So you're asking permission, and you're scheduling that meeting to talk and brainstorm with them, which was step number 6. I think you touched on that. Is there anything else in that meeting that our listeners should be aware of?
The brainstorming part is important. Obviously, you're describing ideal clients. You're hopefully telling a story, and the brainstorming just helps kind of get the juices flowing in their head. So I use, if you can picture almost sort of like a bullseye target with concentric circles.
Yeah.
I'll actually come into a conversation with a piece of paper or blank piece of paper or something pre-printed or whatever else, and I will encourage the people that I'm talking to do a similar thing. So it's, I don't know how many circles, 4 or 5 circles, who knows, right? So it's a good visual to use when you're trying to brainstorm. And the center circle is the one that says, okay, who's perfect? Can you think of one person who might be perfect, right? Who might be less so? The next circle out, right? Next circle out, who's a Who's a maybe in your book? As we've talked through this, as we've described it, who's one person who's a maybe? And then outer circle is, wow, if the stars aligned and everything was perfect, this person might be a good fit. But take my thoughts with a grain of salt here, Mark. So out of that brainstorming, you're going to come up with, say, 4 people.
And so, I like to call those tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 clients. That's how I've used that in a referral framework. So I'm loving the similarities here, Mark. And so in that meeting, you're describing your ideal client. You're offering a client success story. Here, let me give you an example. I love that. And then you're getting an introduction.
Yeah, hopefully that's the goal. And hopefully coming into that conversation, you've prepped them that, hey, I'd love to come out of this with a name or two. That would be ideal. It's an ideal situation where we get that. And then after that meeting, I'd love an introduction. And what I have found the best way to do the introduction is, via email, where you're going to write a note to this person who you think would be a great fit. You're going to put me on the CC line in your email, and then you're going to maybe say a little blurb, in your email. And let me throw this out there. If you're a little bit confused about what to write in that little descriptive blurb, let me go ahead and send you something.
Yep. Yeah. You got to make it easy for them to make that introduction.
Yeah. You don't want to, put words in their mouth, and you can, just say, hey, edit, use this if you want, whatever else. But, in the conversation that we had about this individual, it sounds like this type of information would be useful to them. You can use this if you want. There you go. Right. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't.
And so after you get an introduction, what do you do next? I guess step number 9 is you follow up with your thank yous and progress.
Yeah, I think people who are referring, people who are connecting you with their professional contacts really want to know how it's going, right? Some do, some don't, but I would say the majority do. And so obviously, thank you. Fantastic. Spoke to them. It was really good. We've got another conversation scheduled. And then at some point down the road, you can get back to them. Hey, it worked out really great. We're working together. Things are going along well. You did a great job in sort of thinking about who would be a really good potential client of ours. Thank you for that. It's worked out really wonderfully. Or, we made it through a couple conversations. It didn't really proceed any further. We'll stay in touch, but I'm not quite certain it was perfect. So both of those results give both of you, the referrer and yourself, it gives you a little bit of editing, right? It gives you that important feedback that says, not that one, but that one. So we're able to refine and filter and edit a little bit better. So which is critical. In a world of opportunity out there, in a world of potentials, we want to really be spending our time on the best ones. So the better quality our filters are, the better off we'll be.
Great stuff, Mark. Well, I know that our listeners got a lot of value from your referral process. I know I learned a few things, and I've been putting together referral processes for clients too. So listeners, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Breaking Biz Dev. Please find us on Apple Podcasts. Search for Breaking Biz Dev. Scroll down, and you'll see a place where you can give some reviews and a rating. Give us a rating and a review. We like to hear those. So yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone. Until then.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Biz Dev. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or listen to the show at breakingbizdev.com. This episode was produced by Red Cedar Marketing. If you think a business podcast is right for your company, visit redcedarmarketing.com to learn more.